Last week and today are the two most painful sessions, perhaps, for the entire year. So let me just summarize. Many of you were not here, but I'm not going to repeat, obviously, but we spoke about the Holocaust. Generally, the topic for the last three sessions, because as we're coming to chapter 8, and to the end of chapter 8, basically, Ecclesiastes tells us, I'm frustrated. I see good people, righteous people, and they are suffering, and bad people are getting rewarded, and so on. Remember, there is a frustration. That's verse 14. And we will repeat it, you will see in 16, and then even chapter 9, he goes back to the same question. And I've said this for the last few weeks, this is the most difficult problem for any believer in God. If there is a God, remember the three assumptions. What are the three assumptions again? About God. God is what? God is good. He loves us. He cares about us. Number two, omnipotent. Everybody knows that. Omnipotent, all-powerful. Let's put it this way.
And omniscient.
And omniscient is all-knowing, which means he knows when you get a cancer, God forbid. He knows when you are depressed, right? So, all-knowing. By the way, when I say he, I hope I don't have to explain myself. I just cannot stand it when speakers have to say he or she. Some of you remember, I was in rabbinical school the first year when women were permitted to be ordained in the conservative movement. And it was painful. These poor professors, some of the professors were from East Europe. They spoke still with a strong Yiddish accent. And they would say he, and immediately 3 rabbinical students would say, excuse me, professor, oh, she. So let's not deal with this. Obviously, it's not he, and it's not she, and it's not it. It's God. That's the easiest way to deal with this. And our Siddur, the new Siddur, is trying to avoid it. So we call him sometimes Adonai, we say God, and so on. Okay, so these are the 3 assumptions that most people who believe in God would agree. He is good. He cares about us. He is all-powerful. He could send an earthquake right now. He could bomb all the gas chambers in half a split second if he wanted to. And he knows what's going on. So he looked down and he saw Treblinka. He saw babies burning. Why didn't he stop it? That's the toughest question in life. And this is the most painful question. And so, the first thing that we stressed, and I hope everybody gets it, that the problem of evil, by the way, the whole question is called theodicy. Theodicy, trying to answer this question. So, the first thing that we all need to immediately separate is that there are 2 kinds of evil, right? What are the 2 kinds of evil? Man-made as opposed to God-made. So, man-made, give me an example. Wars. Did you hear what happened this morning? Apparently the whole world is shaking now. North Korea successfully tried hydrogen bomb. This is serious stuff. Hydrogen bomb is 10,000 times more powerful than an atomic bomb, atom bomb. And at the same time, we have serious tensions. I don't know what the market is doing today, but you've seen what's going on. You see what's going on. People are very nervous because Saudi Arabia and Iran are going to, they're basically fighting for domination of that whole region. And I've spoken about this before, that basically, I think I mentioned this, that the Sunni states feel abandoned by America. They feel they cannot rely on America, and therefore they say, you know what? we're going to fight because they feel that America is moving towards Iran, which is an interesting situation. Iranians are already breaking the deal, and we're stuck now. What do we do? Saudis have been our allies, whatever you think about Saudis. Not a nice country. But compared to Iran, they've been good to us. Iranians for the last 30 years have been horrible to us, right? We don't even have diplomatic relations. So anyway, it's going to be, that's why the world is shaking. It's not clear what's happening.
It's China's devaluation.
China's devaluation is terrible. Apparently they reviewed the GDP for America. It's going to be 1% growth. So it's interesting what, they increased by 0.25%, right? The interest rates, and already look what's going on. So anyway, it's an interesting thing. Evil. There is man-made evil, and you can name it again and again and again. But even there, I think we need to make it clear. If you have a problem with 6 million, people say, yeah, but why 6 million? You can say, what about some 60 million that Stalin murdered? You're not upset about that? How about Houthis? Right? In Rwanda, where they machetes, they were just, wiping people. Why didn't God stop it there?
Yemen.
So we have plenty of examples. And you remember Rabbi Rubinstein in the 60s says, the track record of this God is horrendous. So this is a rabbi speaking. So he basically came up with a new movement. It was called God is Dead. Now he always said, I'm not an atheist. He still was a rabbi. He taught, by the way, anybody knows where he taught most of his life?
Princeton, you told us.
No. FSU in Florida, of all places, where my son goes to school. He's still alive. He's, I think, in his late 80s, maybe early 90s now. But he always said, I'm not an atheist. I just have a problem with all powerful and all good. So maybe he had a problem with this one. And again, I want to stress, Rabbi Kushner, I don't want anybody to walk out again, enough is enough. I've heard it for many years. People say, oh yeah, I read that book. Why bad things happen? No.
When?
When bad things. No rabbi would have the chutzpah to write a book called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. Because that's what we're struggling with. Everybody has been struggling with this. I can give you the list. You will not believe it. Starts in 2nd century, in 3rd century. Every Catholic, every Protestant theologian, everybody has struggled with this issue. So the issue is not 6 million, or 60 million, or 2 million. As I said last week, and we all agreed, I think. The fact that tonight there will be several rapes, quite a few rapes, and murders in Chicago, in Baltimore, right here in Riviera Beach, that should upset you. Where is God? So what you're saying then is logically,
It's
not
God.
Emotionally. I want us to be logical here. Any time, or stabbings. We had another stabbing yesterday in Israel. Mika just arrived, by the way. My son arrived safely last night from Israel. He had an amazing time. He called me from JFK. I said, how would you summarize your trip? He says, overwhelming. He says, I cannot even put it into words at this point. But the last Thursday, he was 3 blocks away from that shooting. Remember, there was a coffee shop. He says, we were sitting in another coffee shop 3 blocks away while the shooting was taking place. So the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, somebody asked me last night, do I believe in coincidences? Is it Bashert that you sit at this coffee shop or that coffee shop? I don't have those answers. It's not simple. But the fact is, he felt safe. He had more fun in the last 16 days than the last 2 years on campus. he says it's hard to leave. He's depressed. It's hard to leave Israel. And I know some of your grandchildren are there, and right?
Yeah.
Where is Stuart? He had 2 children there. Anyway,
Got 5
so
and 18.
so the problem is man-made evil. The question is, why doesn't God stop every time somebody raises your grandchild? What is there, right? No?
Me?
Yeah,
I had 3.
3. Are they back?
Yeah.
Is all of them birthright?
One was on a confirmation.
Confirmation. Okay.
With a-
So there were thousands of kids there. People keep asking, are you not nervous? Ladies and gentlemen, let's drop that line altogether. There is always a reason not to go. Debbie and David Powell just came back, and they showed us gorgeous pictures and so on. And they were all over the country, and they felt safer than ever before. So life goes on. Of course, people are reading about San Bernardino, and they say, oh, I will never go to California anymore. It's not logical. We all know that. So the problem with man-made evil is not numbers. It's the principle. Do you want God every time to stop the knife?
Yes.
Or to prevent the rape? Would you like that?
Yes.
Yes.
No, you wouldn't. Because then, by definition, a human being is different from cockroach, or from monkey, or from animals, from anything else is
Free
the
will.
freedom of choice.
Free will.
Free will. If you want me to stop every time there is a knife, I can go on and say, do you want every gossiper in Palm Beach to lose the tongue the moment they say, have you heard so-and-so?
That's a good idea.
Do you want People magazine to go out of business? And People is not the
Don't buy it.
bad one, right? When
Don't
you
buy
go to the supermarket. Why do people pay? I mean, these people are making fortune. Hurting human beings, lying about them, showing disgusting pictures that are made up and so on. So please be careful. The moment you say, yes, I want God to stop every knife, where do you stop? We will not be human beings then. I will be a machine. I can do whatever I want. I can take a machine gun knowing that he will stop. Where do you stop? And I wonder, there have been books written about this. What if there were no wars? It sounds very nice in theory. Remember John Lennon? Imagine all the people. It sounds very beautiful. The music is lovely. It's the most stupidest song ever written. It's stupid. It's horrible.
I don't know the words, so I wouldn't know.
Everybody will be, that's what Karl Marx said. We will all be brothers and sisters. Watch out for utopia. Every movement that begins with utopia ends up with murder. French Revolution, liberté, fraternité, yeah. And then guillotine, how do you say it?
The guillotine.
Right? How many people were beheaded? Yes.
Nevertheless, we do long for the Mashiach, who will bring an age.
Absolutely. But that's the difference between us and Christians. They say, how do you bring Mashiach? What do you need to do as a Christian?
Worship Jesus.
Worship Jesus, accept Jesus, be loyal to Jesus, and
And then you
he
can
will
kill
come
anybody
back.
anyway.
But we say keep the Shabbat. If all Jews will keep the Shabbat, the Mashiach will come.
No, we say much more. We say keep 613, which means treat your cleaning lady nicely, don't gossip, don't say this, don't do this. We have much more. It's not enough to keep Shabbat. It's much more than that.
But if you
And
do
this
Shabbat,
brings
you
me
do
to the
everything.
Holocaust, and I want to summarize for you the 3 disgusting philosophies that came through during the Holocaust, after the Holocaust, and continue until today. What are the 3 excuses, not excuses, explanations to the Holocaust that were given by some rabbis, respected names and so on? Why did God allows 6 million of our people, 1.5 million children and babies to be burned and gassed? Number one.
They weren't
They
observant.
sinned, you sinned.
They did
and
not
you
keep
become-
Shabbos.
Yeah.
They did not observe kashrut. They became very secular. That was the punishment, which is a despicable explanation. You punish a baby for what grandparents did wrong? We don't believe in that. We do believe, and I mentioned this, we do believe that we are responsible for our actions. And we do believe that there is reward and punishment and so on. How exactly we understand it, whether it will happen tomorrow, whether it will happen in the next life, that's a separate issue, and we'll talk about this. There is no world to come in the Bible. The Bible does not show this at all. The rabbis come up with this. Rabbinic Judaism brings up this concept that maybe you're suffering in this world because the rabbis had a problem with this. Maybe you're a good person and you're suffering, but you know what? One day you will be rewarded and so on. So the first explanation was they were not observed. And by the way, it's not only during the Holocaust. You probably remember, some of you remember,
Last week.
the horrible event in a little town called Ma'alot
Yeah.
in Israel. In the north of Israel, there was a school, elementary school, with 200 children. And the Palestinian terrorists surrounded the school, and they were saying, we're going to start shooting each one of them. And there was a rabbi, pretty famous Israeli rabbi, who said, oh, you know what?
They drove on Shabbat.
The mezuzot on the classrooms were not kosher mezuzot.
No, they took a trip on Shabbat.
So can you imagine? Mezuzahs. They were not kosher. You have to check your mezuzahs all the time. And if you don't, 200 children may be killed. That's number one. The second explanation was, and that's Naturei Karta in Israel, and this is Satmar Hasidim in Brooklyn and in Kiryat Yoel. What's the town, right? You know about Kiryat Yoel?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a town in Rockland County. There are buses going every hour with a mechitza in the middle of the bus. I've never seen it. I'd like to take that bus, by the way.
The bus at 42nd
42nd
Street.
Street and 5th Avenue.
When people are going home, and then
It's I would love to see a bus with a mechitza in the middle. Mechitza. That's a mechitza. Separation between men and women. God forbid, men and women should not be sitting looking at each other on a bus. It's 45-minute ride. You never know. Maybe he will lift his eyes and bad thoughts would come into his mind, which is another interesting thing, ladies and gentlemen. Do you remember Jimmy Carter running for office? I was in the Soviet Union at that time. It made it to front pages of Pravda. Do you remember? The Playboy magazine interviewed him and they said, Mr. Carter, you're a good Baptist, tell us the truth. Have you ever lusted in your heart? Because Jesus says, whoever lusted in his heart, it is the same as if he committed adultery, right? So Jimmy Carter said, yep, I am a sinful man. I have to admit, I love my wife, but I lusted in my heart. The whole world printed it front pages, including in the Soviet Union. God, can you imagine? Everybody was shocked, except for the Jewish people. They said, "Las, shmas, who cares? Did you touch?" That's the question. That's another fundamental difference between Judaism and Christianity. Judaism is totally open when it comes to thoughts, feelings, ideas. Nobody knows what's in your heart. What's your action? Actions are much more important. So when people say to me, we don't believe in Jesus, they believe in Jesus. No, there's much more. The real distinction is right there. Your actions, according to Judaism, I have no idea what's in your heart. But don't hurt me. Don't hurt other people. Okay, so that's number one. So number one is they were not observant. Number two, what was the second excuse? That's what Naturei Karta say. What? No.
They,
That's the same.
they took a trip on Shabbat.
No.
I think, one of them.
We're done with that. Number two. What's the second? I mentioned to you. Naturei Karta, the Satmar Hasidim. Why do they march whenever we go to AIPAC? They're standing there saying, it's evil. Israel is evil. They hug Ahmadinejad. What is it? Zionism. They betrayed God. Secular Zionism is evil. The state of Israel is secular. This is against Judaism, and they have to fight to destroy Israel. And therefore, going back to the Holocaust, a lot of people became Zionists, and that's the punishment. 6 million were punished. That's another despicable argument. Do you remember what I said at the very end last week? Rabbi Irving Greenberg, who was the first professor of Holocaust studies in America. He eventually lost his position. Harvard PhD, one of my wonderful friends and teachers, he created a rule. When you speak about the Holocaust, what was the rule? Anybody remembers?
Don't blame God, blame human beings.
Nothing should be said about the Holocaust unless you can say this in front of the burning children. I want you to understand the depth of this line. Whatever you hear anybody trying to explain God, ask yourself, would that person be comfortable standing in front of burning children and saying, it's because your grandparents became Zionists, you're burning right now? That's the problem. Nothing should be said unless it can be said in the presence of burning children. You see, you're also warm. I'm not the only one. One says they feel that it's cold. I don't think it's cold. I think, you see, some people are suffering now, a little bit more. Give us another.
You guys got sweaters.
Okay, number 2. That's number 2. What's number 3? This is the other side. The religious Zionists. What do they say? What do they say?
What do they say?
You should have become Zionists. Why did you stay in Germany? We told you there is no future here. You should have gone to Palestine. Look, we survived. That's also horrible. First of all, at what point? At what point? At some point, their parents could not go anywhere. There was no way to get out. The British blockaded it. Every other country said, no, we have no room for Jews. You know, there were 2 conferences on the refugee crisis. Evian Conference, and the second one was the Bermuda Conference. 2 conferences. And in both cases, in Evian, 32 countries. They spoke about terrible situation. Jews are suffering. They took away jobs. They took away everything. But we cannot do much. We cannot do
There's
anything.
no room for
There
them.
was only one country that was willing to accept
Yeah.
100,000 Jews. Anybody knows which country? Which one? Correct. Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Also Japan, which was turned
Japan
down.
did not.
They wanted human rights turned down.
Anyway, I was just asked to remind everybody, this is the last week to come to the gala at the Kravis Center. There are invitations here if you would like to make reservation cards, if you would like to come to honor very special people, Marilyn and Stanley Katz at the Kravis Center. It will be a beautiful event. We already have 260 reservations. It will be the biggest event ever. It will be beautiful, and they deserve to be honored. And also, it's the 90th anniversary, as I spoke about the fact that we're not just honoring another building here, but those pioneers, those courageous 80 families that stood up in 1924 and said, you know what, there is a future for the Jewish people, we should build a synagogue. Anyway, so number 1, they were not observant, they were not religious. Number 2, they were not, they became secular Zionists, and this is horrible. Number 3, religious Zionists living in Palestine at that time, and in Israel, including Ben-Gurion perhaps. I don't know, nobody ever really recorded that Ben-Gurion said that. He never stood up and said publicly, you know why we lost 6 million? Because they should have been here, they should have come here. He didn't say that publicly, but he probably thought it.
How would you know? What is
Anyway,
that?
so those are the three reasons. And all three do not work because they are morally disgusting. You cannot justify burning human beings to ashes for what their grandparents did or parents did and so on. One final point about the Holocaust. I mentioned Rabbi Emil Fackenheim, Canadian philosopher. He came up with a fascinating concept. What was it about? Anybody remembers?
614.
Yes. Remember this, my friends. This is very powerful. He says there are 613 commandments. He says after the Holocaust, there is one more. Number 614. No. Don't give Hitler a posthumous victory by disappearing, by walking out, by assimilating, by intermarriage, and so on and so forth. This is perhaps the most important one for all of us. We live in the freest country in the world. It's easy to be a Jew, easier here than in Paris. I'm not scared to walk around with my kippah here, everywhere. But I was nervous in Stockholm this summer. Many of you heard that. And in Oslo, the rabbi told me, take off your kippah. And in Helsinki, I was told, do not stand out. And last year in England, I saw posters, death to the Jews. Not to Israel, to the Jews. And not just Arabs. I think you remember I came back and I was shaken. I saw blonde, beautiful blonde, blue eyes, woman standing there, death to the Jews. And I was walking right there, like 10 meters away. And I looked at this. So it's much easier to be Jewish in America, and yet 75, 80% of our people are walking out. Not important anymore. I used to be Jewish. Oh, my parents used to be Jewish, and so on. That's what Fackenheim is saying. What are you doing? You're helping Hitler. What was his goal? Eradicate all Jews and Judaism. He wanted to create a museum to Judaism. Remember? In Prague, that he was collecting all the beautiful Judaica, and he wanted to put it in a beautiful museum to say, there was a civilization once called Judaism. Do not give Hitler a victory. Having said this, and I understand that this is touching a sensitive area, I also concluded the session last week by saying, in my opinion, this is not a good argument, especially when you speak to your grandchildren. Do not try, ladies and gentlemen, to tell your grandchild, you should not marry this boy because Hitler destroyed 6 million Jews. This is not a good argument. If anything, it's the opposite. Look what's going on. They're hating us in France and in Belgium. So the child will say what?
I'm in America.
Why should I take a chance? Why should I raise children who are Jewish if they hate us anyway? So logically, it makes sense to say, you know what? I want to be like everybody else. Do you follow this?
Yeah.
And I've said this on many occasions, and I know that some of your rabbis may have given sermons about this and so on. I disagree. I do not think this is a good argument. I've never stood up and said, you should stay Jewish. Don't, encourage your children to stay Jewish and grandchildren and so on because of the Holocaust. No. Doesn't work this way. I want Jews to stay Jewish because of Judaism, not because of the most evil men who ever lived. Think about this. We should depend on him to decide to be or not to be. Judaism is the most gorgeous philosophy ever created. Jewish way of life has proven throughout history there is something amazing about it. And I've read to you famous lines. Look it up. Mark Twain, the way he talks about it. John Adams says, nothing like this ever existed. This nation, there is something unique about them. Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, not Dostoevsky actually. He was an anti-Semite, unfortunately. I love Dostoevsky, but he was an anti-Semite. But Tolstoy loved the Jewish people. And you name it. People who are mensches, sooner or later will say there is something special about the Jews. Just look at history. There is a reason why we're still here, why we're still teaching our children how to be a mensch. That's our goal. All right. Any questions about man-made? I'm going to leave man-made altogether. Man-made evil. Whether it's murder, whether it's 6 million, whether it's Rwanda, whether it's Syria, whether it's ISIS, do not blame God for that. Blame human beings. That's man-made. Now, why doesn't God stop it? Because He created us this way. Now, and I mentioned this, He could have created some limitations, but that already is dangerous. You understand what I'm saying? He could have created a human being that is always smiling, that is always nice. Where is the freedom of choice? If He limited us, that's already a limitation. Freedom means freedom. I can literally wake up in the morning and take a machine gun and decide to shoot children. That's what freedom means. An animal does not have freedom. When people say, what a good dog, that's a joke. There is no such a thing as good dog. And the one who bites is not a bad dog. This is called instinct. We are supposed to overcome our instincts. That's why we have 613 commandments. We're selfish creatures, thinking about me, and we spoke about human nature. He's upset about human nature. Jean-Paul Sartre was upset about human nature. Every philosopher throughout history said we're not born very nice creatures. We're selfish creatures that think about me. And the goal of any religion should be to make us better, not to make us not to leave us the same. Okay. Any questions about man-made evil? I don't want anybody to walk away confused here. Because if somebody, you will hear this tonight at dinner. You tell them that you spoke about evil, they will say, yeah, that's why I'm not Jewish. Or that's why I don't believe in God after the Holocaust. So, Elie Wiesel put it this way. After the Holocaust, it is difficult to believe in God. But to believe in man is impossible. That's what Elie Wiesel said. It is difficult. Elie Wiesel is the first one who says, I have problems. But he never gave up on God. Remember the other line? A Jew may love God, a Jew may fight with God, struggle with God, but a Jew may not ignore God. Our name, the name of our nation is Israel. Israel. And it means struggle with God. Don't ignore God. You have struggles, you have problems, welcome to the club. I have struggles too. But my real struggles is when I walk into a children's hospital. That's the real problem. That's the real struggle. So, yes, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, basic question with this. And, you know, because something like the Holocaust did exist, and because God is all-powerful and all-knowing, so what we're saying basically is that God knows what's going on with the Holocaust and is making a decision to leave it alone.
Because you're leaving out one more sentence. Because his creation will collapse. Then we are all animals. You understand? Then we are all either animals or machines, computers. And as we know, we're moving in that direction anyway. Computers already are much smarter than we are. Remember I told you about that conference that I went to. They say that most doctors will disappear 25 years from now. No doctor can compete with Mr. Watson. You know who Mr. Watson is? The smartest computer in the world. By the way, it used to be like this room. Now, you could put it in a box. Mr. Watson knows, Lynn was there at that conference, remember that? Mr. Watson knows every cancer case in history that happened maybe last night in Japan somewhere. No doctor can catch up. No doctor can be, no scientist can be informed the way that computer can. No computer, no human being can compete with my iPhone. I have every library on this planet in my pocket. Right? I have every article ever in my pocket. Think about this. I have every word, every dictionary. I can translate into any language, anything think about this. So computers are becoming much smarter. Yes, anybody else? Yes, please.
Yeah, other than the Jewish lawyer in Anna Karenina, how do you know Dostoevsky was an anti-Semite?
Oh, he's written a few things.
Yeah?
It's been proven. Look it up.
Okay.
How do we know that Dostoevsky did not like Jews? He says terrible things in Brothers Karamazov, in Anna Karenina, and in almost every novel he goes out of his way, as opposed to Tolstoy, who goes out of his way always to show a Jew in a nice light. By the way, the same could be said about Shakespeare. The only time Shakespeare writes about a Jew is a disgusting story. And you remember I told you about Cristina Kirchner, the former president of Argentina. Did you all follow this? Yeah. During the summer, she walked into elementary school and they were studying Shakespeare. Anybody knows the story?
Wow.
Oh, come on, I shared this story with you.
Didn't hear it.
Christina walks into the classroom and they're studying something, a Romeo and Juliet or something, and she stands up and she says, no, you want to understand the real powers in the world, you should read The Merchant of Venice. That's the real important book that Shakespeare wrote, basically saying Jews are taking over the world. By the way, she's gone, you know that. Thank God. And the next president is a mensch. When I was in Argentina last year, we had lunch with this rabbi who's close to this guy, and he says, if my boss wins, for the first time in history of Argentina, there will be a rabbi who is a minister. I have to check out who minister of what he is. He is a minister of something, welfare or something. We have a rabbi in Argentinian government, ladies and gentlemen. And this president is anti-Peronista. So we're moving backwards from Peron. Okay, yes, sir.
Well, every argument has a counter-argument, but using the father-child analogy, when our children misbehave, we see them bullying or carrying a knife or planning to do some evil. We discipline them. So you can carry that into the God argument also, say, we don't take away our free will from our children when we discipline them and teach them what's right. Where is God in this picture of teaching us what's right? Are the commandments enough and now we're on our own?
That's an interesting one. Do we not limit the freedom of our children? Ask any 5-year-old. Ask any 10-year-old. Ask your 15-year-old teenager. Are you free? I cannot wait to get out of here. Is it true or not? What kind of freedom are we talking about? It's a horrible life for a 5-year-old. I tell you when to sleep. I tell you when to eat. I tell you what to eat. I tell you when to brush your teeth, when to take a bath, and so on and so forth. Where is freedom of choice? So let's not go there. Yes, we need to do this, of course. We need to discipline our children, otherwise they will grow into animals. Because of human nature. Because human nature does not teach them how to share the toys. We need to teach them. If we don't, they will grow up being animals. But ask any child, do you have freedom of choice? I talk to B'nai Mitzvah kids. You know, this is very interesting. You know, when I begin to work with a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah on their bar mitzvah, I say, you know, these meetings are between you and me. You can say whatever you want in this room. Your parents are welcome here, and sometimes your siblings and grandparents and so on. So very often, the kid walks in on a Sunday morning and says, Rabbi, I don't want my parents to be here. So for the first time, a child is treated, for the first time literally, the child is treated differently than ever before. Because I tell the child, don't worry about your parents. I want you to write a speech that comes from your heart. It's your speech. It's the most important day in your life. And you've seen what our kids are doing here. Last Shabbat, people were weeping, people were laughing, people were crying, people applauded. I mean, and this was a special child. I told you about those of you who were not here. Harrison is a very special child, and his parents were shocked. His parents did not expect this from their child. Because he was, as he said in his speech, he was born with a lot of disabilities, and he says, I've been trying to overcome them. And then he says, how many of you have been kicked and called names like stupid? Huh? How many of you felt this way? Well, I did. And that's what he talked about. Anyway, so with all due respect, it's not total freedom. Disciplining, yes, but they know that they don't have freedom. A child, when the parents lock the door and say, bye, be nice, what do the children do? Ha! Let's go. Now we go. Think about college in America. It's a joke. College in America has become a joke. It's basically you go there to get drunk and to have sex. Why? Because of what you're doing to your children until that moment. They feel for the first time they have freedom. Yeah, let's become animals now. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. The crisis of education today in America goes all the way back to that concept. I discipline my child. I tell him, don't hit your sister. Of course we have to do this. But there is a price for that. They do not have free choice. And the moment they see that you're gone, they go crazy. And a congregant came to see me yesterday. So New Year's Eve, their children decided to invite their friends. 40 teenagers. Now they're not legal age. 16, 17, maybe 18. I said, did you allow alcohol? He said, no, I took all the bottles. I took it to my bedroom. And my wife was sitting there hoping that nothing horrible will happen to our house, right? But I said, well, some things happen there, right? He says, absolutely. You cannot tell 17-year-olds they cannot drink or smoke pot. So you have 40 teenagers smoking pot and drinking vodka in your house on New Year's Eve. And the fact is that these are wonderful parents. They felt, you know what? If they go to somebody else's house, it'll be worse. At least I can go downstairs once in a while and walk around. So the smoking was not in the house, this was probably outside in the backyard and so on. Okay, so freedom is a two-way street. Okay, I want to go to Job now. The book of Job, I have said this before, I will never teach this book. I don't know how to teach it. Definitely, I have problems with that book, but I'm not the only one. First of all, no chapter. It's a book. I'm talking about a book called J-O-B. There are many Jewish names today. In fact, secular Jews named their kids Joshua and Jonathan and Rachel, Rebecca. All these names have become very popular. You don't have that book. It's a separate book. I just want to try to introduce you to that book and to struggle together with that book. Because I suspect most of you have not read this book and probably will not read this book. It's a very difficult book. Although, as I mentioned to you, Victor Hugo, if we can leave as an inheritance to future generations only one book, it must be the book of Job. Carl Jung says, I'm furious with this book. Dostoevsky, God and Satan play with human hearts. He went to church and the Russian Orthodox priest spoke about Job. And Dostoevsky was 8 years old. Apparently, he writes in his diary, he could not sleep for the next 6 weeks. He was weeping every night. So he was very angry. Anyway, there are many people who feel it's an important book. Schopenhauer had quite a line also. Anyway, the book of Job. Yes?
No, I'm very favorable to the book of Job. I think everybody should read it, and it's interesting, but the point is that only the Jews would put a book in their Bible where God doesn't look too good.
Correct.
And I think that's something we should be proud of. We include everything.
Correct.
And-
But I'm telling you in advance, those of you who don't know the book, that you will not walk away saying, wow, I'm so inspired now. You will be depressed and perhaps angry. So let me summarize. Yes?
It was a quite successful Broadway show.
Correct.
Stop the World, I Want to Get Off.
I want to get off. Stop the world, I want to get off. And then there was a famous play also, based on Job. What was it called?
JB.
JB. Was it on Broadway?
Yeah. Priest did.
Very successful.
A long time ago.
JB. Many years ago, in the 60s, 70s, something like that also. So clearly, it's a masterpiece.
It is.
But it's a masterpiece because every human being is touched by that question. So let me summarize the book of Job for you. So I began by saying today there is Rebecca and Rachel. It's very popular to name Joshua. When was the last time you went to a bar mitzvah of a boy called Job?
No.
Job Goldstein. How come? How come? Because not a great book. In that sense, I agree with you. I mean, a rabbi should not say it's a terrible book in the Bible. It's a very important book, but it's a painful book. And therefore, no Jewish parent wants to call their child Job because Job immediately brings a lot of horrible associations. What are the associations? So
But he
this
was
is
a
the
very
story.
upright man.
What?
He was a very upright person.
Correct. So that's the story.
And he wasn't a Jew.
The introduction, we're not sure if he was a Jew. There is nothing Jewish about this book. So, the introduction is the key. If you miss the first few verses, you will not understand the rest of the book. You and I know the introduction. Job does not know the introduction. That makes a big difference. What's the introduction? God was bragging about a wonderful guy by the name of Job. Satan comes to visit him. Satan is the only book where Satan plays a very important role. Satan is mentioned. Basically, it's the evil, the dark side of humanity or whatever, of life. Satan comes to God and says, ha ha ha, of course you're impressed by Job. Because look what you've given him. You blessed him with everything. He has 10 beautiful children who have their own children. He has flocks, and he has sheep, and he has wealth, and he has a beautiful wife. Of course, just take it away from him, and you'll see he will he will curse you in your face. That's what Satan does. Satan is, what's the word, goading? Kind of like, oh, come on. Challenging. Well, come on, let's have a bet. I'm going to prove to you that basically what is he saying? Human beings are selfish, and the only reason that they observe, they listen to you, they love you, they follow you, is because you reward them. They believe in reward and punishment. And therefore, of course, if you reward them, they will be good people. They will be nice. But don't reward them. Try to take it away. He will curse you in your face. God says, a deal. He shakes hands with a Satan. It's a horrible, horrible scene. And that's what Dostoevsky says. Satan and God play with human hearts. It's terrible. What kind of a game is this? So what happens? 7 boys, 3 girls, dead. Grandchildren, dead. All the flocks, all the wealth, the gardens, everything is taken away. And what is Job's reaction? Very famous line. You've heard it almost at every funeral. I conclude most funerals with that line. Adonai Natan, v'Adonai Lakach.
Yehi Shem
Yehi Shem
Adonai.
Adonai Mevorach. God has given, God is taking it away. May God's name be blessed. Basically, I accept. He's still a believer. He still continues to be a mensch.
He's more righteous than God. In the book.
Well, at this point, all we know is that he accepts his fate. And he says, I'm still a believer. What's next?
Well, actually,
God is very proud, right? Satan is more devious than that. He says, I'm sorry. God makes one condition.
Don't hurt Job.
He says, you can take everything you want, but don't hurt him personally.
Don't kill him. It does hurt him.
Don't hurt him. No physical hurt at this point.
Tornado.
So everything is okay. He loses everything, but he's still healthy.
Tornado.
Satan comes over and says to God, no. The test is not valid. You told me not to hurt him. Wait, allow me to hurt him physically. Then you'll see he will betray you. He will spit it. He will curse you in your face. What happens? He inflicts horrible diseases on him. He is in boils. His flesh is burning. He is sitting in water just to try to cool off. He is in pain. He is suffering. The wife comes over and says, this is too much. Anybody who knows what she says?
Curse God and
Curse him and die. But don't suffer like this. Come on. Curse him. What is she saying? She believes in reward and punishment. She's still traditional. Every religion believed in reward and punishment. So I don't want you to think that people in Brooklyn are idiots. Or you will see it as the 3 main friends in this book. They're not idiots. God says in the 2nd paragraph of Shema, "Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha," you should love God with your heart. What's the 2nd paragraph? And if you follow what I'm telling you, everything will be wonderful. So I don't want you to think that these people are crazy who say something is wrong here. We do believe in reward and punishment. God promised so. But what's the interpretation, by the way? The 2nd paragraph. I taught this many years ago. The 2nd paragraph of Shema, if you read it after the Shema, what's the interpretation? Yeah. But it's a problem. So what's the traditional interpretation? How do we explain that? Are we lying? 3 times a day we say the Shema and we say that paragraph. Are we lying? That there is reward and punishment?
Yeah.
No, we don't. He is promising everything in plural. He doesn't say, you, Schwartz, will not suffer. You, Jewish people, will be okay if you listen to me. That's the big difference. Which means some Jews will suffer. Anyway, let's go back to his wife. She says, curse God and die. I cannot watch you suffering like this. What does he say? It's a very powerful line. He says, should we accept all the good things, but not the bad things? No, it's not right. I still believe in God.
But he called
Whether he is good to me or bad to me, that's not faith. Faith, real religion is that there should not be self-interest. If there is every time you go to shul, your bank account jumps by $1 million, you're not a good observant Jew. Do you understand? Ladies and gentlemen, philosophically, it's a very important idea. What the Satan is saying is crucial. That's why that book is so profound. It's a very powerful book. What he's saying is, what is the test? What is the best test of religiosity? Are you really a believer? Or do you believe only when everything is wonderful? But the moment you get cancer, forget it, I don't want God. So this is the point. She says, enough, you're suffering. Curse him. He says, no, I will not curse him. Should we accept only the good things and not the bad things? So these are the two famous lines of Job in the beginning of the book. The rest of the book is very difficult. 3 of his best friends come to visit. They heard that he's suffering, and they come to comfort him. And it's interesting, they sit quietly for 7 days. That's the concept of
Like
Shiva.
Shiva.
You have to sit and just, when somebody's in pain, don't talk. You know, I've said this on many occasions. When you walk into the house of mourning, do not say, good evening, how are you? Not a good question. Somebody just lost a beloved one, don't say good evening. I heard once a woman jumped and said, good evening? It's a horrible evening. So we're supposed to walk in without saying hello. We sit next to the person, or some people go to them, like sit and bend down and hold them and express their condolences and so on. For 7 days and 7 nights, they're just sitting there. And then, the next 35 chapters are very difficult. They are traditional. They are true believers who feel that there is a reward and there is punishment. So they begin, one after another one. Come on, Job. God would not have done this to you unless you deserve it. The same like those 3 explanations. These were, they were not Zionists, they became secular Zionists, the mezuzahs were not kosher, and so on and so forth, right? They say, come on, Job, you must have done something. He says, no. I'm not perfect, but I know that I have not committed horrible sin that is commensurate with this punishment. The other one jumps in and says, maybe you forgot. No, I have not forgotten. Come on, did you have bad thoughts about this? No. It goes back and forth. Maybe your children committed something terrible. They're struggling. Ladies and gentlemen, they're not idiots. They're struggling. They're trying, this is theodicy. They're trying to justify good God who allows this. Now remember, they don't know the introduction. Only you and I know the introduction. They never heard about the Satan making a deal with God. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. And he says, no matter what, I will not accept this accusation. I'm not a sinner. And then at some point he says an interesting line. He says, yeah, I'm not perfect, I'm a sinner, but who created me this way? It's his fault. It's a great, great line. But anyway, it goes on and on and on until the final chapter. And it's the most famous scene. It's called, there is a book about this, In the Whirlwind. What's whirlwind? Like a hurricane?
Yeah.
In a whirlwind.
Cyclone.
There are plays about this, poems about this, and so on, books about this, and so on. Like a tornado. So this is what he says. After 37 very tense chapters, God finally appears to him. And listen to the speech, the final speech. This is the ending of the book. Get prepared like a man. Until then, God does not appear. Now he appears to him. Get prepared like a man. I will ask you, and you tell me. Now, this is interesting. Remember, throughout the entire book, what's the question that Job is challenging God on?
Why am I?
Why? Tell me if you hear the answer in God's speech to him. Remember the question? See if you see the answer there. Get prepared like a man. I will ask you, and you tell me. First of all, this is already interesting. I'm asking you a question. What's the Jewish answer?
Because.
Question with a question.
Because.
I did not tell you to ask me. Please tell me why. Why am I suffering? Why did you take away all my children and so on? So I will ask you, and you tell me. This is a great line.
42.
Where were you when I established the world? Tell me, if you know so much. Did you ever command forth a warning? Have death's gates been revealed to you? Do you know about death? Do you understand what death is about? Have you examined earth's expanse? Tell me if you know. Can you guide the bear with her cubs? Does the hawk soar by your wisdom? Does the eagle mount at your command and make his nest on high? Next line is very problematic. God answered Job and said, did he answer? Where's the answer? So far, just a bunch of questions, right? Will the contender with God yield? He who arraigns God must respond. Arraigns means what? Challenges?
He wants to put God on trial.
Arraign. What is arraign?
Accused.
Accuse. He who accuses God must respond. And finally, that's the speech. Where's the answer? What is the answer? Why? 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 What's the answer? Because. Right? Don't we do this to our children? So, but watch Job's response to that. Job answered God and said, lo, I am small. How can I answer you? My hand I clap to my mouth. I have spoken once, I will not reply. I talked of things I did not know, wonders beyond my ken. What is the answer?
We can't know.
God is God, and we are we, and who are we? How dare we even try to understand this? And look at the last two verses of chapter 8,
8?
verse 16.
8?
Chapter 8, we're concluding chapter 8.
Oh, we're going to...
For I have set my mind
8 for this.
to learn wisdom.
Yes.
This is 16. We're skipping 15 about fun. We'll talk about this next week. Eat, drink, and have fun. That's a very difficult line also. In the Bible.
Yeah.
In the Bible, we have 4 times Ecclesiastes says, you know what? Just have fun. So, but let's look at 16. Ecclesiastes agrees with Job. I have set my mind to learn wisdom and to observe the business that goes on in the world, even to the extent of going without sleep day and night. Here I am, the wisest man in the world, trying to understand wisdom, understand God. 17. And I have observed all that God brings to pass. Indeed, man cannot guess or fathom, is a better translation, the events that occur under the sun. For man tries strenuously, but fails to find them or to fathom them, to understand them. And even if a sage should think to discover them, he would not be able to understand them. I cannot understand God. That's what the wisest man who ever lived says. There is no way. There is a medieval philosopher who says a beautiful line, those of you who know Hebrew. Lu yadativ ha'itiv. If I knew him, if I knew God, I would be God. What is the answer? God is God, we are we, and we have no way to understand his secrets, his plans, and so on. Now, this is probably not the answer that you were hoping for, but let me ask you a question. Is there a question that would satisfy you? What is the answer? What could be the answer that would satisfy us? There is no other answer. Do we want God who is not all-powerful?
No.
Then he's not a God, really. I want a God who can stop everything, right? He's in charge. Do we want God who does not know me? No, I don't want that kind of a relationship. Do we want God who is not good And some philosophers said, he's evil. He's malevolent. So, I remember I told you that in Auschwitz, a group of rabbis put God on trial. They had their defense attorney, they had the accuser, they were going back and forth, and at the end, the rabbi stands up and says, we declare God is guilty. Oops, now let's go daven mincha. We need to have a service now. And what do we say in the service? Oh, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu, right? So you have to pray to him no matter what. So Henry Heine, the last words. You know Henry Heine?
No.
Probably the greatest German poet. The last words before he left the world. He said, God will forgive me because that is his job.
Look at the shots on my knee.
Play of words. J-O-B. That is his job. He's basically saying, shame on you. Why are you doing this to us? So you know what? The least you can do is to forgive me.
No, Michael.
That's what Heine says. Nathan Zach, a great Israeli poet. Again, in Hebrew it sounds better. Lifamim mitgager Elohim al avdo amatok iyo aval umet. Rachel, how would you translate this? Sometimes God misses his sweet friend, sweet servant Job. However, he is dead. So God does not answer Job, and Job does not really answer God. At the very end, he says, sorry, I should shut up now. I close my mouth. Now, this is not the total end of the book. What's the real end? Now, the test has been done. He passed the test. Guess what he does now? To me, this is the worst part of the book.
Yeah.
He gets rewarded.
He gets rewarded now. How does he get rewarded? He lost 10 children, lost. He gets 10 new children. And the girls are the most beautiful women in the land. Oh, very nice. And he had 700 sheep, now he gets 1,400 sheep. He gets everything twice as much. And I don't like this answer. I don't like this ending, because what does it mean? You can substitute, you can heal my pain by giving me possessions, things. I don't need 10 more children. Give me my other 10 children, right? So the book is very problematic. Basically, there is no answer. If God is God, then okay. If I knew him, then I told you that one. So I want to give you a very interesting one from an Israeli philosopher, Matityahu Tzivat, the meaning of the book of Job. He is considered one of the top-notch philosophers. He says like this. Basically, this book teaches us that there is no law of retribution. Nature is neutral to man's moral action. The sun rises on the righteous and sinner alike. Rain falls on the desert, whereas it could have been directed only to cultivated land where it is needed by people. Think about this. The rain falls in Sahara. Sahara does not need rain. California needs rain.
It's raining today.
It's raining today, Baruch Hashem. So there is justice in the world. You see, it took some time, but there is justice. So what he's saying is very powerful. He says, animals do not observe tenets of morality. This is the real powerful one. Now you will understand Satan is not evil. Professor Tzivat says, only a concept of a cosmic order that does not operate according to a built-in principle of moral retribution makes possible the selfless piety that was the first issue posed by the book of Job. Are you believing in me because you're getting reward? Or do you believe in God because God is God? That's what Satan is asking. The real test of faith is not when everything is wonderful. Now, again, I mentioned to you last week that when I came to Palm Beach, I met survivors who said, Rabbi, you will never see me in temple. After what I've witnessed in Auschwitz, I cannot believe in God. On the other hand, and my answer is, who am I to challenge you, right? But on the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, I suspect that many of you met survivors who became religious in Auschwitz, who became more religious after what they lost the entire family. And what was the main point of Rabbi Kushner? When bad things happen to good people, this is the best-selling book, international best-selling. Until today, it sells hundreds, thousands of copies. What is his answer? His answer is, when I lost my baby, you all know the story of Rabbi Kushner, right? He lost his baby. He lost his son was born. That Rabbi Kushner, Harold Kushner, everybody should read this book.
He had progeria.
It's a book that has been read in some 80 different languages. It's a powerful book. His son was born with a horrendous disease. What is it called?
Progeria, an aging disease. He ages very quickly.
What is it called? Progeria. So progeria is a horrible disease. So basically, when your child is 4 years old, he looks 60. So imagine, this is a beautiful human being, a successful rabbi in Natick, Massachusetts, and he has a daughter. But then the second child is this, and then he dies at the age of, I think, 12. So imagine, a rabbi has to stand up on Yom Kippur